Uh-oh. See? This is what
You
I'm
just froze
talking about.
you froze for a second, but now you're unfrozen.
Yeah, so I hit start, and now this is kind of what happened last time too. Disconnected, reconnecting, reconnection successful, it says. All right, well, I'm hoping that that doesn't continue to happen because that's a bummer, but it looks like the audio is working today and all of that good stuff. So we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Mental Health Wednesday. We're doing this one on a Wednesday because I have a work trip coming up, and Scott was gracious enough to reschedule this for a Wednesday instead of a Monday. So really excited for tonight's topic. We are going to be talking about prolonged grief disorder, psychedelics, and psychiatric service dogs. So that's quite the range of topics. And really excited to get into all three of those realms there with Scott. We do have a question queue open. If you have any questions, feel free to type into the chat, !Q, follow it with your question. That'll get it popped in there, and we'll ask while we're live here together. And we also have some community questions that were sent in ahead of time, so we'll make sure to address those as well. And Scott, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time out.
Hey, you are welcome. It is great to be here on your show on Wellness Wednesday.
Yeah, there you go. I like it. Wellness Wednesday. That's perfect. So a little bit about Scott. Scott is an author, a career coach, a business coach, and a psychedelic support coach in Boston, Massachusetts. Scott is driven to help clients follow their true, now, how do you say that word?
Azimuth.
Azimuth. There we go. To follow their true azimuth, which is different from true north. It means coaching clients to identify the true focus of their life, something that speaks individually to them, recognizing the forces that push our lives off course, and adjusting to them so you get where you want to go. And when you're 90 years old, and you look back on your life, you have a sense of pride, accomplishment, and meaning with no regrets. When he's not coaching people to be their very best, Scott manages a nonprofit farm animal rescue, which sounds right up my alley, and also participates in Tough Mudders, teaches Sun 73 Tai Chi, stand-up paddleboards with his dogs Groot and Rocket, which are cute, cute names, and goes camping at state parks throughout New England as much as possible. His daily spiritual practice focuses on a bunch of things that I definitely can't pronounce. You wanna throw those out there also?
Let's see, probably Anapana, Vipassana.
Yep.
Metavana.
Yes, those are the ones that I don't know how to pronounce. Scott believes service is vital to a life well lived. He volunteers as an EMT instructor, a firefighter, and a master gardener in his community. And in his free time, which doesn't sound like there's much of, he even writes books. So if you are interested in connecting with Scott, I've got several different social links for you to touch base wherever you want to touch base with him. So I'm going to have to break it into two because it is quite long, but we'll send those in the chat right now. And again, Scott, thanks for joining us here.
It is great to join the two of you.
Yeah, I know.
You and the cat.
He is all over me today. I don't know what the deal is. He's all over. Maybe if I give him some treats, he'll calm down. I mean, he'll be really excited for a second.
Oh yeah, he's really calming down.
Yeah. Well, but so if I give him treats like now, then he'll have all the treats and he'll be like, okay, she gave me treats. Now she's done. That's my thinking, at least. That's my logic. We'll see if it works. So going through your bio, it's very clear to me that you wear a lot of hats. What do you spend the most time on, and what are your biggest joys and challenges with what you do now?
Boy, what do I spend the most time on? I think it's interesting. I tend to spend time in spurts and chunks. And then and the problem with that is that when I start focusing on one thing, other things that I need to focus on fizzle out. Yeah. And so this has been a very tough couple of days because this last week I've had multiple concurrent deadlines hit.
Oh, man.
And so I'm like juggling things. So it feels like plate spinning sometimes. And I had one person I had a call tonight, and I'm like, I answered the phone and I'm like, I'm sorry. He's like, what? I'm sorry, Colin. He's like, well, he says, I'm trying to think about the polite way to say this. I'm like, no, you can just tell me I fucked up. I just screwed up, and yeah. I know. He says, oh, I said, well, I knew I had to apologize to somebody this week. I thought it's you this week. I really enjoy writing when I'm focused on a topic, when I feel like I'm really contributing something. That really hooks me in. When I start feeling like it's a book report, that depletes me, and I feel like I'm in high school again. And I have 5 incomplete books that are just sitting there because they were very exciting and I was very excited about it, and then they fizzled out, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get back to that someday, and I don't. The piece that I like doing the most of everything is pieces of service, and actually doing Tai Chi every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. I'm with this group of Vermonters, and when COVID hit, I was teaching Tai Chi for fall prevention. These are all. I'm not going to use the word elderly, although I just did, didn't I? They're in their 60s, 70s. I'm in my 60s, 70s, 80s, and so this is an important part of the story, because when COVID hit, we were trying to do stuff on Zoom, and that wasn't working out. And eventually, we started meeting outside at this waterfalls in Vermont with these like 70 and 80-year-olds. And we have continued to meet outside every Tuesday since then. We've missed one Tuesday since 2020.
Wow.
When we started doing that. They even bring shovels in the winter, because you have to practice, at the flat area. They bring shovels in the wintertime to a public park so they can shovel the snow down to the grass so we can practice Tai Chi, and they have their little spot.
That's awesome.
That is, no, this is, and again, this is wintertime, 20 degrees. One time we met, it was 6 degrees outside.
No, thank
Everybody
you.
was bundled up doing Tai Chi, and these are not like 20-year-olds.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing.
You will not catch me outside if it's 6 degrees. The coldest I've ever camped was in 8-degree weather, and I will never do that again, ever, ever, ever.
Don't leave Texas.
No, I know. I mean, I'll just stay in my house is the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's great that you have that kind of community that's really gelled through something like COVID also, because that's something that, maybe y'all wouldn't have been meeting outside were it not for that. So
absolutely.
That's really cool.
Yeah, when COVID kind of finished, I know COVID's not over.
Right.
But I mean, when things loosened up again, I was like, you want to go back to we met in the senior center, and I says, you want to go back to the senior center? And everybody was like, no. I'm like, really? I'm like, no. I'm like, we're going to continue to meet in the park. Yes. I'm like, okay, we're just like,
I like
vagabonds.
It. I think that's great, because then you're out in nature. You get a little bit of outside time. I guess if you're not bundled up, maybe it's a little extra vitamin D and just kind of that connection with nature too. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's really fun.
Like
it's a nice place to do it.
Yeah. And I feel you on the, when it feels like it's too much like a book report, then it's not really going to get done very much. I get those feelings a lot with some of the things that I do.
Right. Yeah. It starts becoming drudgery because you've lost your passion. And that's really an important part of a life that's engaging, is having some passion. Like you have passion around this podcast. You have passion around helping people. You have passion around the content that is here. Yeah.
Right? And the thing is, well, right. And so I've got this passion around the podcast and around what we do. Where the passion starts to wane, though, sometimes, like you'll notice that my Twitter account is sometimes really active and sometimes it's not really active. And that's because I go in these like jaunts of going, okay, I'm going to make all of the picture posts to go with whatever this week's podcast is. And I'm going to make all of the quotes and turn them into something really pretty to post on Instagram. I'm going to do all of this stuff and pull out all of these things. And then it's like, I'll do that for a couple weeks and that's all I got.
Right. The mechanical stuff, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
mechanical piece.
yeah.
I had that with my last book. Where's my last book? Wait, it's like a magic trick. Here is my last
Oh,
book. Look at that.
nice,
So
nice.
this book I put together. It's a workbook. It's a psychedelic integration workbook, and it's a journal, so it's mostly blank. See, there's blank pages on it. Key
That makes it
questions.
easy.
It makes it easy. You might think it makes it easy, but every time I needed to make a change and I went into Word and I show the formatting so I could change it, it went from like 111 pages to 149 pages. Like the
Oh
whole pagination
no.
thing went off, and it turned into this. I spent like 6 hours just on the formatting
Oh
for this
no.
book, and the first part of the book, the first like 4 pages are supposed to be blank, and then the introduction starts as page 1. Well, I couldn't. I finally gave up. The introduction starts at page 7 on the book, and I said no one's going to notice that because they're filling out this book when they're doing mushrooms. They're not going to notice
Right?
page 7. They might notice page 7 actually, but maybe not. I don't know. I was like, that's it. It's going. It's done.
They'll find
No one
meaning
has
in that.
noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You got to use a program like Adobe InDesign or something instead of Word. Word is such a hard program to actually get the formatting right in. I work in Word, Excel, and Creative Cloud, which is the Adobe version of a lot of those.
Yeah, the
And
publishers want something in a Word piece that can be formatted.
yeah, yeah. Oh, bummer.
Oh man. Yeah.
Oh, do you have a serial killer or true crime story that fascinates you?
It's interesting. The viewers, listeners might not know that you send out those questions ahead of time. And I got that question yesterday, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had to Google what a serial killer. I'm like, I can't even think of a serial killer. And part of the reason is that I don't watch television.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't watch really. I leaf through the stuff on Google News so I can have some cogent conversations with friends when I talk to them of like, hey, do you know who's president now, or that type of stuff. But it's a piece that I just don't have time for because I'm so busy with stuff. That said, I do really get fascinated by these news stories when there's this person who seemingly had a great life, a great family, no one knew, right? It's like, who knew that he was chopping people up in the basement? And this
Yeah.
whole secret side of him or her, or even those things where I think there was a guy recently that in Massachusetts killed his wife. And so it wasn't a serial killer. He just killed his wife and
Yeah.
chopped her up in the freezer and then got rid of her. And I think, was it that way always? And it was a secret, or did something shift? And I mean, did she, when they were getting married, think, God, I don't know, maybe this guy's a serial killer. I mean, that's the piece that fascinates me, because so often our perceptions of things and how things really are don't match up. It's like when someone's struggling with depression, right? It's really a mismatch between perceptions and reality.
Yeah.
That's going on, and the thinking in reality and how you see things. And so that really kind of intrigues me when those types of things happen. And I'm like, boy, you dated, you did this, there were no signs of anything, right? That's
Yeah.
the piece that's really kind of captivates me.
There's a great show called Snapped. And if you ever get bored and you're like, I want to know how things happen, that's a great one to watch, because it's about those kinds of stories where someone seemingly out of the blue one day just snaps. And It goes into those kinds of
Really?
stories. Yeah. Yeah. So if you ever have a day where you're like, you know what, I just need to watch TV. Sounds like that doesn't really happen for you, but some days that happens for me. So, and then there's a commercial out right now. I wish I could remember what country put this commercial out, but I've seen it a couple of times. Maybe it was Norway or something. Some other country. I don't know. Not here. Anyway, it's these two guys and they go to a football match and one of them's really cheering and all happy and like up and down and out of his seat and cheering. And the other guy's just like, yay, great, it happened. And it shows them and they're like buddies and you can tell they're buddies. They're like hugging each other whenever they score and everything. But the one guy's just not as enthusiastic. The other guy's super enthusiastic. And then it says something to the effect of, sometimes the signs are easy to spot and sometimes they're not. And then they show this one guy coming back, the one who had been sitting down and all calm and reserved a little bit, and his friend had killed himself. And it's like, sometimes the signs are not there. So the friend that was all up and happy and outwardly, outward appearances don't always mean that there's not something going on underneath. So it was just like a check-in.
You have to check with your friends, and people don't like talking about that.
Yeah. Yep. That's
people don't like talking. They're afraid to talk about that. We'll talk about anything but any type of emotional struggles. We want to put that. And here's a little fact. I don't know if you know this. This is a horrifying fact, actually. And I know this not only if you can Google this, look this up. Don't take my word for it. But I also was. I also worked as a help, and when I was in college, I worked for a peer helpline and a hotline, and then I was a clinical supervisor of a rehab that also had a hotline. We often see when someone kills themselves, we see all this stuff about suicide prevention hotlines. Do they call this? You're not alone. You even see it. I remember going up to San Francisco and on the bridge where people jump off the bridge. There's a sign that says call for help. Suicide hotlines don't work. They don't work. It's a shocking thing. Yeah. If someone's going to kill themselves, they're going to kill themselves. They're not going to call a suicide hotline. Most of the folks that you have that call those hotlines are struggling or they're sad, but they're not suicidal. They're just reaching out for a friend to talk to. And many of them are frequent flyers. They call every night, and you're talking to Tom again, and actually clinically what people do is when you've got those folks, it's such a common piece that those folks get a time slot, not a time slot, a time frame. Yeah. So when they call, Tom calls in, it's like, okay, I can talk to you, Tom, but you got 15 minutes. What are you doing to this? Okay, we got 2 minutes left. All right, bye. Wow. And sometimes Tom will call back and it's like, no, you already had your one call for the night, Tom. It's like, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And it's a lot of folks call, they're more like social isolation hotlines, but we push them because instead of dealing with the support and the pieces that people need so they don't get into that frame of mind, we're like, oh yeah, just, here's some medication and a suicide hotline, go away.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there were any kind of, statistics out there on the suicide hotlines not really being super effective. But I love the push that you're seeing on some that I've been seeing on some social media of just check in with your friends, like really talk to someone and ask how they're doing. Don't just take it at face value that they're doing okay because they're posting smiling pictures or because they're being happy at a sports event. Like that's not checking in. That's just being there with them. And you never know whenever they're considering that to be their goodbye. And they'll never say that out loud, that this is goodbye. This is one more sports match. This is one more family event or something. They're not going to come out and say that. You got to talk to people. So.
Right. And the best thing, I hope I'm not jumping around into a question that's lower down. You'll have to figure that out. I don't know. But this is the best thing. This is the tip. This is one of the big tips for you. If you have a person in your life that you care about or don't care about, if you have a person in your life and they are struggling with something, depression, grief, PTSD, anxiety, the best thing that you can say to them, hands down, is how's your ex, or how's your ex today? Not their ex, but how's your whatever it is.
How's your depression
So
today? How's your ADHD today?
Yeah, how's your anxiety today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that how's it going is not helpful. It's just
How are you?
they're going to talk about how are you. If somebody came up to me and said how are you, I'm going to be like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Right? The person at the grocery store that's checking the line out says, hey, how are you? I'm fine. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Here, what do you do? Blah, 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 blah. But it's different when you say, how's your grief?
Yeah.
How's your depression? Because especially if you say today, and this is why there's a couple of benefits to this I'm going to tell you about, first of all, from the friend that's asking. So you're the friend asking. What you're going to get, you might think you're going to get somebody vomiting their emotions all over on you. You're not going to get that, especially if you say today. They're going to give you a status update. They're going to say something like, it's okay, it's not as bad as yesterday. Mm-hmm. Or I had a rough morning, but things are better now. Or felt a little bit agitated last night, but this morning it's not there. Or, I saw this thing on the news and then it's away. You're getting a present, not a direct thing. Like if you came up to me and said, talk to me about Brian, instead of coming up to me and saying, how's your grief? And you says, are you thinking about Brian these days and the times that you had with him? I'm going to start crying because you're asking me about content, not status. That is such a huge piece. Now, what's the benefit to the individual? I check in with you. If you and I were checking in 5 times this week, I would start connecting that, my grief's not the same all the time. That is huge. Mm-hmm. Because when you're struggling with something, you often see it as an immovable force, a rock that's in the way, and it's there all the time. When we think about things in the past, how was your week? Oh man, it was depressing. It was horrible. It was really bad. It was like, really? Because, when we were talking on Tuesday, you said it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then Thursday afternoon, you said, was the whole week bad? Well, no. I mean, we tend to have this black and white thinking around stuff, which then spirals down it's just a mess. We just spiral more and more because we're thinking, God, I'm depressed all the time. When the depression, like any emotion in life, is like this. Yeah. The grief is like this. It changes. It's not, and if it changes, then it's not about you and it's not permanent. It's flexible. Right. The only other way to make that question even better is to turn to somebody and instead of saying, how's your depression? Turn to them and say, how's the depression? How's the grief today? How's the anxiety today? Because oftentimes we over-identify with that's who I am. Yeah. Who are you? I'm depressed. Well, wait a minute. Depressed is a solid state of being. But we already talked about that. It's this fluid thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not X because that's not me. That's just the weather. Yeah. Right? It's like someone saying, it's like me turning to you and saying, how's the weather in Texas today? Mm-hmm. It's a status question. How's the weather in Vermont today? I was totally oblivious to this until after my husband died and I was grieving and really struggling. And when was this? Maybe 8 months later, I had a knee replacement. It was stark, I'm telling you. It was painfully, disgustingly, pathetically stark that people were asking me all the time, how's the knees? How's the knees?
Ah.
And no one was asking me, how's the grief? How's the
Yeah.
grief? I wrote a blog post about it. I did a Tough Mudder with a person who's not a friend anymore. And this is another point of this whole piece because we'll get to that being. But throughout that, it was one of the emotional, because Brian and I did Tough Mudders.
Mhm.
I mean, people knew we did Tough Mudders. It was common knowledge that we did
Yeah.
Tough Mudders. It was very hard for me to do this piece, this race, the first time since he died. And this person who knew this, who is a trained mental health, substance abuse professional, worked for the state of Vermont, known me for 30 some years, never asked about that.
Wow.
Never asked how my knees were. Never asked about the grief.
Mm-hmm.
Not once. Asked about the knees like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Crazy. Such a start. I was like, I'm blown away whenever somebody asks about my knees, and I'm like, wow, you know me all this time, and I mean, after my knee operation, I was walking like 3 days later.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my knees creak and click and do those types of things, but you know, if someone asks me about my knees, I'm going to be like, well, they're a little achy today, or you know, this one's clicking a little bit. Then that's about it. They're not going to get huge drama about my knees.
Right.
They're afraid to ask. So the other point of this, and I've had to ditch 2 friends.
Wow.
2 friends who refused to say, they're like, how can I help you? And I'm like, all you have to do is say, how's the grief? Check in with me about that.
Mm-hmm.
This one person who I knew for, I don't know, 25 years, 26 years, helped her become licensed as a counselor, all this other stuff. She gaslit me as a result of that piece. Was like,
wow.
oh, you need help. You should see a counselor. I'm not your counselor. You want me to be a counselor? And I'm like, I don't want you to be a counselor. I just want you to be a fucking human being.
Yeah.
That's what I want. So, if you're listening to this, ask your friends, number one, to say, I saw this on this podcast. Show this podcast. I'll tell them.
Yeah.
You turn to that person and say, how's the depression? Mm-hmm. How's the anxiety? How's the PTSD? How's the grief? How's your anger? How's the anger? See, it's important to, and then if they refuse to do it, ditch them, because you do not want people like that in your life. Mm-hmm. They are going to hold you back, and you'll find people there that will support you. Mm-hmm. And if it's hard enough going through life without people supporting us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard enough. We need people to support us, and if they're not willing to, when I was grieving, I read a book early on, and I'm still grieving. But when that was going on, I read this book, and this person wrote in this book, you will lose friends over this, and I'm like that. No. Yeah, 2. I have another friend, and he's already lost a friend over this because people don't want to deal with it. They want you to move on. They don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Go cry in your room by yourself.
Right.
Right. Still worried about that? You're still upset about that? Yeah.
Well, kudos to you for asking for what you need from someone. And then when you don't get it, like that's a sign that they're not truly being a friend to you. So kudos for both asking for what you needed from them. And then whenever they weren't willing to provide it, being like, you know, this isn't
the road.
Yeah, this isn't really a friendship, and I'm gonna draw a line. So good job. So I want to go back.
It was hard. It was hard. So
I'm sure.
I wanted to let you know when this happens and you ask for the support you need and someone doesn't get it and you tell them to hit the road, Jack, that is going to be really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
But it's also really, really important to have courage and push through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to go back because 488 has a question in the chat that I want to get to. He says, this is related to the serial killer question, but what kind of cereal could you kill? And what he means by that is, what kind of cereal could you eat a lot of in one sitting? And I think that's just a cute question.
Captain Crunch.
Captain Crunch. See, mine would have to be like Lucky Charms. I love Lucky Charms. I never get them, but they're so good.
Have you ever had Captain Crunch before?
Oh, yes. Yes.
All right, so you know, and people that are watching and listening know that Captain Crunch stays crunchy in milk, right?
It does.
It's like really crunchy. It's like I have eaten Captain Crunch so much at one time that the roof of my mouth was sore.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
Oh my gosh.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Because when I eat that, even after just like one bowl of it, the roof of my mouth hurts. And so that's why I don't eat Captain Crunch very much, is because it does stay so freaking crunchy the whole way through that it hurts my mouth. Well,
that's a good metaphor for the kind of person I am. I'm going to eat Captain Crunch, even though I know it's going to hurt my mouth. I'm going to have like 6 bowls.
Because it's so good. You just enjoy it that much.
Absolutely.
So, all right, now going back to grief a little bit. So can you explain what prolonged grief disorder is and how it differs from normal, quote unquote, because everyone's grief is different, right? But the normal accepted grief process following a loss.
Do you want the clinical opinion or do you want my opinion?
Well, yours, obviously.
Okay.
And then the clinical, I guess, too.
So the interesting piece with all these diagnoses, and this is really an important piece to remember. Especially if you have been diagnosed, this is an important thing to remember. Those, and think of this in light of what's currently been going on for the last weeks and weeks and weeks in the House of our government, right? All right. Those pieces that are there, those diagnoses are there because a bunch of people got together and voted on it and put it in a book. And their idea, their rationale for having the book in the first place was so that people could communicate diagnosis to each other. These people that do this are not some guru on a hill. They are people with political viewpoints, political biases, prejudices, hatred. For years, gay men and lesbians were considered, if you were gay, it's funny to think about this in our society, more like they, them, what's your pronoun type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But for years in the 70s, if you were gay, you were mentally ill. Mm-hmm. You were mentally ill. And then one day, in the mid-70s, they had a vote. And hundreds of thousands of gay men and lesbians were cured overnight. It's a fucking miracle, right? So let's just think about that, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that really puts the book and the numbers in perspective. Yeah. And especially if you are hanging on, you're like, my diagnosis is this and this. That you could be cured overnight. They could vote that out and your diagnosis could be gone. So in the same sense, this fast forward to this it's a new diagnosis. Mm-hmm. This prolonged grief disorder is a new diagnosis. And their rationale when they came up with this and voted it was that, there should be a timeline on grief. In fact, one of the criteria, they have criteria. Mm-hmm. They're like, it has to be this 6 months and do this and da. One of the criteria in prolonged grief disorder is that the grieving process takes longer than the societal norms say it should. Mm-hmm. Well, who fucking comes up with the societal norms?
Right.
Right? That's just the most fucked up thing I've ever seen or heard of. What it does, I have a friend who says to me, and it's really been a nice shift of thinking. Like when he sees something on the news or we sees a perspective on something, he's like, who has money in the stake of that perspective being the true perspective that you're reading in the news? And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to think about it. So who has money in this diagnosis and somebody being told, well, you've got prolonged grief disorder. Well, that opens up treatment money, that opens up money for drugs so they can dope you up so that you can be happy, because somebody someplace thinks that we're all supposed to be happy all the time, and if we're not, then there's something wrong with that, which is actually bullshit also. If you're thinking you need to be happy, that's baloney. It's like saying we should have sunny days all the time. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We don't have sunny days all the time. We have winter, we have snow, we have rain, we have sleet, we have floods, we have tornadoes, we have hurricanes, and we have sunny days. That's life. That's life. And to turn and say, we're only going to have, that would be really bad if we had sunny days all the time.
Yeah, I mean, down here in Texas, we did have, I think it was 60, either 55 or 60 days straight of over 100-degree sunny days. It was awful. It was awful.
We need that mix. And that's a part that makes us human. And so when this came out, I remember I really voiced strongly against that whole piece, because what it does is it puts a timeline on grief. And I know the piece that stands out for me, and I still struggle when I think about my spouse and how he died and seeing his body burned up, and it was pretty traumatic, and it's still a loss that I feel. And I think about these families that have had children shot in school. How dare somebody put a timeline on that person's grief because they lost their child, went to school, and they didn't come home, and they didn't get to say goodbye, and 15, 20 years later, they're still struggling with that? Well, fucking of course they are. It's to say that there needs to be a timeline and you just need to put it behind you and you just need to be happy is arrogance at its worst. At its worst. Really, what there should be, in my opinion, it's all my opinion.
That's what we're here for. It's fine.
Really, what there should be is, in my opinion, is a diagnosis for fueling emotions. That's really the problem for any of those pieces, because the PTSD comes and goes. I mean, you know this, I know this. You could, if you wanted to, put yourself into a PTSD dark hole easily. Think about it. Do that. You could fuel that. You could fuel that, right? I could fuel my grief pretty easily and put myself, someone struggling with loneliness, right? They're not lonely all the time. It comes and goes. You could put yourself in a lonely dark hole by just buying into the thoughts that are not even your thoughts. They just pop in your head, right? It's like going to a website and a pop-up window comes up to sell you rabbits, and then you click on it and you were there on this website to, I don't know, look at cars. Pop-up window comes up and it's about rabbits and you love bunnies, and the next thing you know, you're on a website about bunnies and you're not buying the car anymore
You went down a literal rabbit hole.
Right? You've gone down the rabbit hole. And
that sounds like something I would do, to be honest.
that's something a lot of people do with their emotions all the time.
Yeah.
They fuel those pieces. And part of life is that these things happen, and I'm, as a human being, I want to embrace every single aspect of life. And so if I'm sad, I don't want to push that sadness away. I want to feel that sadness, right? And I want to be, some people are like, because I do wear my emotions on my
on your
sleeve.
Yeah.
And I'm very straight up. Like I have no trouble crying in front of somebody if I'm talking about a piece that I'm doing. And when I do that, people are like, "Oh my gosh, psycho, crazy." I'm like, what? I would be a psycho person if I went to see a funny movie like The Big Lebowski and I cried throughout the movie. Right? There'd be something wrong. If you go see The Big Lebowski, you should be laughing.
Yes, you should.
Because a lot of silly things happen. And if you think about The Big Lebowski after the movie's over, you should be laughing. Mm-hmm. Or if you see a clip of it, that's an appropriate thing to do. If you see a movie that is highly emotional and charged, Steel Magnolias or something, there should be some tears at that piece. The Academy Awards give out awards all the time for movies that have that impact, right? And so we want to embrace all of those emotions because they're who we are. So I'm going to be grieving for that whole part. I mean, Brian and I were together for 31 years.
Wow.
And so that's a big piece that's missing. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, it's almost 4 years now, it'll be 4 years in December that he's died. And there's times where, I think about him and I really miss him.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that emotion.
Right? No, not at all.
If you're out there and somebody's telling you there is, ditch them.
Yeah.
Ditch them.
Absolutely. Kicking them to the curb, 100%.
Yeah.
That's the same time frame that my grandfather died. He died in December of 2019, we had his funeral in December of 2019, so he died probably late November, but and still, there are moments during some days. So I have my mustache tattoo is for him, and there are still lots of moments that I'll be like, oh man, I wish I could call and talk to Grandpa about this, or like, oh, Grandpa would have had a great joke for right now because he was always joking and stuff, and it makes me a little sad. And then there'll be, I had a dream about him the other day, and I woke up and I cried for a little while. I was just like, oh, he came and visited me, and it's one of those things, like, it's okay. I feel like in my own self experience, I guess, it's fine to have those moments. It's not a bad thing to be like, oh man, this is a moment that reminds me of him. And this is a moment that I wish I could connect with him, but I can't. That's not there anymore. That's a bummer.
Right. And you know what else that you didn't say that's also special about that piece is that those tears and that sadness that you feel is a direct reflection of the depth of your relationship.
Yeah.
If you didn't give a shit about him, you wouldn't shed one tear.
Yep, that's true.
Thousands of people have died today. I've not shed one tear for them.
Nope.
Not a single. Thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands of people have died since Brian died. I'm not shed one tear for them.
Yeah.
Not one. Not one. And it's the power and the depth of that. It's the price of admission.
Mm-hmm.
It is the sign of a life well lived.
Yeah.
And so if you have those feelings come up, that's something to be proud and grateful about, because that means that at some point in your life, there was a deep relationship there, and many people don't even have a fraction of that.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
That's really awesome.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Why would you want to push that away?
Yeah.
Stupid shitheads vote and make that a diagnosis. Clearly, they have no deep relationships in their life and want everybody to be medicated.
Yeah. I mean, look, sometimes medication is great. Sometimes it is actually helpful, but there are cases where it is overdiagnosed or not, over-prescribed, and in those cases, if we can prevent it, why wouldn't we? Like, the part of the normal human experience is emotions. That's part of being human, is experiencing a wide range of emotions, and they're true. Your emotions are always trying to communicate something to you, which is something that my therapist always tells me, and sometimes I tell her to shut the fuck up. But it's like, yeah, okay, you're sad or you're angry or you're whatever. So what's that trying to tell you? What's the message there? And it's like, well, in the case of grieving, you're just missing that connection, and that's okay to do. It's okay to experience that. You don't have to push it away, push it aside,
Right. Yeah.
So
I'm not against medications either, but I'm also totally aware that we live in as the U.S. in particularly is med happy. Chemicals are the first. It's like, oh, well, you've got some. I remember the doctor told me you had at one point, he's like, gosh, your cholesterol seems to be going up. Maybe we should look at some cholesterol meds for you. I'm like, what? How about stop eating pork? Or how about run more? Instead of the first thing you want to do is start giving me meds. I'm like, fuck that. I came back 6 months later, and guess what? I had no cholesterol, was all normal again. Yep. Right? But the first thing my doctor said to me was, oh, we should look at this piece. I'm like, oh, man. Mm-hmm. Well, sure. Yeah, give me the medication, and then I don't have to change anything, and I can continue to do whatever. That's just right. And that's for, stuff we're okay talking about, like cholesterol, right? The stuff that we don't want to talk about and we want to put back in the closet, depression, anxiety, PTSD, all that stuff, just, take your meds and go home. You have trouble sleeping at night? Here's some Xanax.
Right.
Right?
Not swap out a bowl of that Captain Crunch every other day for a bowl of heart healthy Cheerios or something.
Right.
Yeah. In your experience, what are some effective coping strategies and techniques for folks who are dealing with prolonged grief or just grieving in general, and how can they find a sense of meaning and purpose in their lives again?
It is so that there's a couple pieces to this. So remember the meaning and purpose one. We'll come back to this. Okay. And so one of the biggest things to be aware of is how often we fuel our thoughts and how often we go down that rabbit hole. And we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And so you can do this anytime that so just as an illustration, next time you're in the shower, do this for a week. Next time you're in the shower and you're washing your hair, don't say this, but think this to yourself. I'm washing my feet. While you're washing your hair, think only in your head, I'm washing my feet. And then when you're there in the shower, standing in the shower, let it go. Think to yourself, I'm sitting in the living room. And don't say it. It's not an affirmation. You're not trying to do this. You're just trying to think, I'm sitting in the living room while you're standing there in the shower. I'm going for a walk. You're not saying it. I'm saying it to illustrate this point, but it's your inside voice. As I have a friend who went on a date last week, and she was a first date with this guy, and he was like, I don't know why he wanted to go to the library, but he's like, let's go on a date to the library for our first date. And then she's like talking, and he's like, use your inside voice, and she's like, anyway, so you should be using your real inside voice,
your internal voice,
voice that nobody else can hear, and what that does is it creates this. You don't have to do it when you're struggling emotionally. It's not an antidote. Mm-hmm. It's a preparation technique. It's like going running so you can hike up the stairs without getting winded. The goal is the running is not the running. It's the hike up the stairs and not get winded and not have a heart attack. And so what this does is it creates this dissonance and an awareness that, it's one thing for me to say, I am not my thoughts. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the shower washing your hair, thinking I'm washing my feet, you're like, yeah, that voice in my head is not a reflection of what's going on in reality. It puts it juxtaposes those two pieces, mm-hmm. because one of the problems besides fueling it that happens is we think that thinking in our head is absolutely real and unchanging.
Right.
Real, unchanging, and it's not true. It's not true at all. And so even when your friends say, how's the depression, and you're talking about it, you're having an appreciation that it's unchanging. That it's changing, mm-hmm. that it's not static, that it's dynamic, like clouds in the sky. Right? It's not you. It's like clouds in the sky, and it's not a reflection mm-hmm. of reality. And we get hooked by that all the time. We get hooked by that with positive emotions. Love. We see somebody, and everybody's like, "Why you're going out with her?" Or, "Man, you're going out with him?" And you're like, "Oh, he's the best thing ever." And they're like, "Yeah, what about this and this and this?" "Oh, but I still love the fact that he calls me kissy." Right? It's like totally. It's not reality all the time. Things, and so this piece really helps you be aware of the mismatch. Mm-hmm. So you can do that in the shower. You can do that while you're driving. You can think to yourself, I'm riding my bicycle or flying in a plane. And you'll be like, wow, I'm thinking that's just totally disconnect. And that will, if you do that, that's a great piece. Not just once, though. It's not a one-time thing.
Right.
You got to do a bunch of times for it to sink in. And you got to do it not as an antidote or a Band-Aid to a problem. You have to do that proactively.
Yeah, kind of a preventive measure.
And that's also about meaning in your life. You have to be proactive about having meaning in your life. If you're depending on your wife or your husband or your kids or your dogs or your fish to give you meaning, you're missing out. That is your responsibility. You have to figure out what your vision is, what your path is, and what your direction is. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of tools to help you figure that out on the internet. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You can just Google, figure out my vision, figure out my values. I wrote, here we go, magic trick. If you're stuck, you can get this book for free. Not this actual book. This is the workbook. But you can get the book, mm-hmm. The bucket list. It's called the Life Transforming Bucket List. You can get it free on Amazon. You can get it free on Google. You can bring it out for your Kindle. Free. The print copy is going to cost you because it's printed. But you get the free book, And the strategy in that book is that you just identify everything on your bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to do before you die? People have easier if you're stuck trying to figure out your mission, go through this book, figure out what are the things that are on your bucket list. And then what you do is you figure out the themes, you figure out the categories based on your answers, and then you reverse engineer to your core values that are driving your life. And then you throw the bucket list away because you don't need it anymore, and you live your core values. And if you live the core values, you don't need a bucket list.
Mm-hmm.
Ever, ever, ever. But if you turn to somebody and say, what are your core values? I'm going to be like, I don't know. Right. But so this is kind of a roundabout way to figure out what's important to you and what's valuable to you so you can then do that. And it's not, I have to tell you, I have a friend who's grieving, and Paul is really struggling to figure. He's like, I have no meaning. I have nothing in my life. Well, Paul, he's a plumber. And so his solution was, as he's older, he's like, well, I'm going to take my plumbing and I'm going to volunteer my time as a plumber for not-for-profits who need a plumber to help around that. That is not meaning. It's 6 months from now, and I've said this to him. I said, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Because what you're doing is you're just checking off a box and saying, I'm doing community service, right? Or he's got a job that he's volunteering for, so he's got a job he's not getting paid for. But it's not a mission. It's not a purpose. It's not a vision. It's just like, I'm going to the movies. I'm going to go out to eat. I'm going to go do this. And now I'm going to volunteer. So I've done that. Check. I should be happy. Life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way at all. You have to figure out what your path is. And for all I know, Paul should be a rock guitarist. And if Paul took the time to figure that out, he might be aware of that. I don't know. But it's definitely not let me fill in the holes in the boxes. Right. And this piece of the bucket list is, or this piece of your values and direction, is something you should know from when you're young all the way up. I have a list. When I was younger, 1984, I took an Outward Bound course, and it really set the trajectory for my whole life. It really did. And one of the most profound things I've ever done. And during that Outward Bound course, we made a list of 25 things we wanted to do before we died. And I still have that list. I still have that list. And then at some other point in my life, I made up another list, and then and so I can see the themes. I can see the reflections. One of the things that was on my list maybe 10, 15 years ago was that I wanted to get a scamp. It's a little camper, and travel around and visit all the national parks and do all that stuff. Well, after Brian died, I knew that I could not continue to do the things that we did together. Like I was like, and people were like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm never going to Disney World again. I am never going to." I mean, we spent so much time. It was like we went to Disney World for our 25-year anniversary, and took my mom along with us. I mean, we wore tuxedos in Disney World. Brian and I. My mom was all dressed up. We had corsages. We went around. We walked around. We got pictures in front of the castle, pictures with Mickey, pictures of this stuff. Who in their right mind goes to Disney in tuxedos? I mean, it was in November, so it was, it wasn't 900 degrees out. Yeah. It was a great. That's how much I'm not going there. I'm not going back to these other places that we went to. And I was like, I got to do something different. And I was like, oh well, I'm going to go camping because I can do that with the dog. I'm going to get a camper and I'm going to go camping with the dogs. And that may seem like Paul thought, well, you're just checking off boxes, right? I'm being a plumber. You decide to get a camper to occupy your time. And no, because that was part of my vision and purpose 10 years ago.
Right.
that I talked about wanting to do. This was so it was a piece that fit in. It was a natural piece that fit in. It wasn't like I sat around and said, "What am I going to do?" You know. I did that a little bit with the mountain bike. I was like, I got to do something I can't run anymore because of my knees. I have 2 knee replacements. And the doctor's like, well, you can ride your bike. And so I got a mountain bike, and I can't do that with the dogs because they're dogs. They're dogs. And so striving to be creative around that, I'm now paddleboarding with the dogs, which is going to be the next book that I'm writing.
That's awesome.
And we have paddleboarded hundreds of miles this summer. And I did not know. So just picture this, because I know you've got dogs. Mm-hmm. So just picture, I had never paddleboarded in my life, ever. And of course, my dogs haven't paddled. I got a big black lab and a Jack Russell terrorist. And they had never done any of this stuff. And so the 3 of us learned paddleboarding at the same time.
That's cute.
And it was just like depression and anxiety. It wasn't like this. It was like this and like this and like this. There was anything that showed, that life is not static and things are impermanent and things are dynamic. It was that. It was like, you did so good yesterday. What's going on now? Or vice versa. You did so bad yesterday and today you're perfect. Yeah.
That's great. Well, if anyone is interested in the Life Transforming Bucket List, I did put a link in the chat to that one. And then also, you mentioned Outward Bound, so I went ahead and put a link to Outward Bound as well, just in case anybody wants to check those out.
That's what you were doing. I was like,
yes.
Playing the piano or something. It's so nice of you to do that.
I get on here and I'm like, okay, let me find what they're talking about real quick and put a link in the chat, so if anybody wants to, they have a convenient way to just click through to it.
Awesome.
Now,
awesome.
You're a psychedelic support coach also, and I know there's growing interest in the potential therapeutic benefits of psychedelics for mental health. Can you talk a little bit about the role of those substances in supporting folks who are dealing with conditions like prolonged grief, but also about other things with like depression, anxiety, ADHD?
Yeah, this is a recent shift for me. Recent. And as I said, here's the workbook this is the first of 3 books that I'm writing. And I actually wrote this book. This is the 3rd book. This is I wrote this because I had a client who was doing a psychedelic experience, and I was like, I need to get this for you so you've got it after the psychedelic experience. So it was really a pragmatic piece to get the psychedelic integration workbook, which is you can get the printed one on Amazon. And so it's also noteworthy that that there's a lot of conversations about what are the psychedelics do, and they use the word medicine a lot referring to this, which is that's I'm not a big proponent of. I'm aware of the power of words. That's what people were doing a lot with the marijuana legalization piece, right? That let's call it, medical marijuana and my medical needs for that, and let's use all the medical. You don't go to you go to the grocery store, you go to the liquor store. You don't go to the marijuana store. They don't call it a marijuana store. It's like a pharmacy that you're going
dispensary,
to get your med, the dispensary, right? You don't go to the liquor dispensary. You don't go to the gas dispensary, but you go to it's loaded with this stuff because their goal to manipulate, this comes back to this piece that I was saying. My friend was like, where's the money? The goal is to get that stuff legalized from a medical perspective. And then, people are it's going to be a mess in a couple of years because of it's going to be a huge, I wrote that about in one of my books also, about how that's going to really creep up on us because people just legalized it and there's no, for Christ's sake, you get more information on the back of a bag of Oreos in terms of, what the ingredients are, calories, fat, all this stuff, nifty little chart. If there really needs to, and I'm telling you, at some point we're going to have that on the back of marijuana products. But anyway, it's bad decision making on the side of public service stuff. But they voted it just like they vote prolonged grief, and they just let's just vote it. It's now the law of the land, or it's now in the book, and that's the way it is. What was the question? I never mind.
Talking about psychedelics and their role in supporting folks with mental health.
And so it's noteworthy, and this is only for one psychedelic, but it is the psychedelic that's used most often for depression, ketamine. They just did a study. Are you aware of the study?
No.
I wasn't talking. I was talking to the viewers, but that's okay. They were answering me. So, no.
Well, I'm not.
They just did this study because they've struggled with doing like a blind placebo testing to say, let's get everybody together and we're going to give you ketamine and you folks we're going to give niacin to because it makes you warm or whatever. Or we're going to give you mushrooms and you folks something else. And we're going to give you acid and we're going to give you. Well, the thing is that after a while, who's wasted and who's not because the placebos go off. And so this, at the Stanford University, they did a study where they found people who had severe depression and also needed surgery. Severe depression and surgery. And what they did, they didn't tell anybody. I mean, people knew everybody thought everybody was getting ketamine, but some people got ketamine and some people got saline. And everybody went to surgery and then came out the other side. There was no difference between the placebo and the ketamine.
Wow.
None. So this is what that tells me. See, because somebody said, well, you're just saying the ketamine doesn't work. I'm like, no. What I'm saying is that the ketamine, I think my interpretation of that is that the ketamine is not like medicine. So the piece that's really, really important from whether now it's ketamine, and I would extrapolate that to be all psychedelics, is your experience, your engagement with that experience, and what you take away from that experience. So psychedelics are like an Outward Bound course. They can transform you with effective facilitation and guidance because it opens you to see things in a different way. That's the real key, not some magical elixir that's somehow going to change your neural receptors and chemicals. No. And so it really emphasizes the importance of having effective preparation, having a clear intention, and being engaged in a way so that you don't get hooked. And they spend a lot of time when they talk about preparation and what you're doing, and they're like, you need to come up with an intention, but you don't want to have expectations and you don't want to have goals. And in my opinion, that's just a word game. What they're really saying is, because you could have an intention and that intention could be a goal. You're just calling it an intention. Right. You could have an intention and that intention could be rock solid as an expectation. And if you don't get that met, you are just totally foiled. What they really should be talking about is you have what you want, but you want to have some flexibility around that. So that if things aren't exactly like you want it to be, you're not like, oh, it sucks. You got to have some openness about it. And you don't want to have so many things wrapped up in your psychedelic experience that is so many goals. It's like a mile long of things that you want from that one experience. It's going to fix all your past traumas, all your
Right.
issues, every single thing. You're going to be perfect. You're going to lose 50 pounds, and you're going to be following your schedule. And it's just, that's crazy to think that any single thing could do that. It's like, so you become like, you're thinking like you're Moses, going to go up and get the 10 Commandments and come down, and here it is. I figured out the answer to life, the universe, and everything is now in the palm of my hands, and I'm never going to have any more problems as long as I live. Thank you very much. Not going to happen. So a good facilitator will help you figure out those pieces that you can get some insights for. And so and I'm talking from direct experience. What happens is that you start to see things in a way that you haven't seen before, and you recognize that you and your thoughts aren't necessarily the reality around you. Right? Because it comes back to this piece that we were talking about earlier of psychological flexibility, that it's like this, and that I'm in the shower and I'm washing my hair and I'm telling my voice is saying I'm washing my feet. Suddenly you're looking at a tree, and the tree dissolves. Was the tree dissolved, or has it always been dissolved? What's the piece that is happening there for you? And that flexibility that comes out of that opens you up to other pieces that you can do, as long as you're engaging with it in an effective way.
Yeah.
They don't talk about engagement in the psychedelic therapy piece, and that's a piece that they're missing. There's and a great example of that is there was an African runner just this summer running in the Atlanta 10K 4th of July. Are you familiar with this? You're smiling. So this runner, she was an Olympian. She's obviously prepared, right? She was totally prepared for the race. It's obviously integrated in her life because she's been training for years and years. It's about who she is. She was first in the race, and people were breathing down her neck, and she was trying to get to the finish line, and she somehow, right before the finish line, became disengaged from whatever the hell she was doing. It's a horrible story. So she's running behind this. There was a motorcycle in front of her, clearing the way. Here we come, and maybe 1,000 feet before the finish line, 500 feet before the finish line, the motorcycle's like, well, I should get out of the way so the motorcycle made a right turn and went down this street, and she continued to follow the motorcycle down the side street until she was like, holy shit, what's going on? This is the way it's going.
Yeah.
She turned around and she busted her ass to try to catch up to those people, but she ended up getting third place. Cost her $7,000 because first place was $10,000, and this was they figured out it was like $1,500 a second that it cost her in this whole piece. Well, what's the moral of that story? She became disengaged from what she was doing. She wasn't thinking. She wasn't focused. The finish line is right in front of her, and she went that way, right? And so the same thing can happen in your psychedelic experience without good guidance, because you're going away from the finish line, and something happens, and then you go this way. And you don't have to go that way. There are things she could have done along the way to stay engaged the whole race. There are things that you can do in psychedelics to stay there. So this whole engagement piece is a piece that I think we're going to see in psychedelics is going to get more and more important, not just preparation and integration. So now what? Integration is, so the preparation and preparation focuses on why. Why are you doing this? What's your goal? Why? Engagement's about the how. Different than the why. How are you going to be in this piece? And then integration is what now? So we go from why to how to what now in that process with skills. And the experience opens. I mean, we could potentially do the same thing with skydiving, right? We could be like, here we do this stuff, here we go. Oh, I did the skydiving, had this experience, how was that? And what are you going to take away from that and apply in your regular life? But not everybody is willing to jump out of a plane. It's much easier to eat some mushrooms and at least in my opinion, it's much easier to eat some mushrooms.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's true. So is the book that you were holding up, the integration workbook, is that the one that you published this month?
Yes. It's the one that I published
That's
this month.
Awesome.
Just this and this picture on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
This picture on the cover, I took that picture. It's blurred out in this psychedelic way, but I took that picture during my first psychedelic experience.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
And it looked just like that during that.
Hey.
I remember coming around and part of it is how you engage. My engagement was, or my intention was, all right, I want to see I want to experience this. And I think because I've had such a lot of practice in Vipassana, which is focusing on body sensations and awareness, that I was very focused on the sensations that I was getting. Even, days afterwards. And I ended up writing this powerful piece called something. In my opinion, people who have read it are like, that's exactly it. Something's different is what I called it. And there was a noticeable, palpable shift. People were like, I don't know what it is, but you're not as edgy. You're not as, I don't know, but something's different. Everybody was like, something's different. And I'm like, you are absolutely right. Something's different. And what do I do to figure out how to hold on to that difference so I don't lose whatever that difference is? Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is, but there's a piece of being more present, aware, connected. I still don't know what it is, but I can tell you this, something's different.
Yeah.
It's really...
So how did you...
Be like, I'm going out to get mushrooms. We're all going to Colorado to get mushrooms. Let's go. That's close to Texas, right?
It's a road trip. It's 12 hours, but yeah, it's a while. So how did you first get into psychedelics? How were you first like, I want to try that?
I was really strongly encouraged, and by a friend of mine named Jordan, who was like, I think you should try it. He was a good guide. He was like, he says, this would be good. He gave me some psychedelics. They're psychedelic chocolates. They looked like they were really tasty. Dark chocolate.
I like just dark
like
chocolate.
a Dove. Looked like a Dove bar.
Yeah.
Looked like those Dove bars that you get from like Walmart that are like in a little packet. Like that.
And you open up and they have a nice little message on the inside.
Yeah, this was wrapped up in gold wrapping.
Oh,
it looked like you could have. And so he was really aware about engagement. And he was like, you want to do it while you're walking out in nature. You want to do it while you don't want to do it while you're watching television, right? Or watching some flick. It's not like drinking alcohol. So you want to do that in a way that you can experience it with no music, no distractions, just you in there. And that was right up my alley. And then he was like, and if something comes up, don't resist it. Don't do what we usually do and try to argue it out in your head. Get up, go for a walk, get re-engaged, and that was really helpful. And it wasn't so much the experience that was the piece that really keyed me in. It was days and weeks later where I was like, there's this difference about me, and not just, in psychotherapy, we talk about this thing called the Johari window. And the Johari window is this four-paned thing, and it's kind of like the Eisenhower matrix. And the Johari window, one window is things that I know but other people don't. Mm-hmm. And then another window is things that I know and other people know. And then another window is things that I don't know and other people know. And then the other window is things that I don't know and nobody knows, like subconscious-y weird stuff. And it was that third pane of things that other people know that I don't necessarily know that was a huge impact for me. It was the confirmation that there is something different. This isn't just in my head, that people that didn't know that I had done shrooms and had that experience were like, something's different. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it really stood out.
That's great.
So,
and it's good that you had a friend who was there to really kind of help you with it and who had that experience and everything as well. That's great.
Yeah, I should have paid him. Instead, he got his name in the front of the book.
Hey, there you go. A little dedication.
There he goes. And I gave him a copy of the book.
So here's another
Thanks,
show.
Jordan.
Yeah. Here's another show recommendation for you if you haven't watched it already. Have you ever seen Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia?
Yes.
I love that show. Such a good one. And they go into so much detail about the different options and the different ways and the different experiences and everything. It's really neat. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So nice. I want to switch and talk about our last topic of the day, which is
we got 5 minutes left.
Service animals. I mean, listen, we can go as long as you want to talk. So there's no time constraint on my side, but I know that you got to get up early. So
no, that's okay.
So
I'm very passionate about service dogs.
Hey, listen, you're very passionate about a lot of things. I like that about you. So I do want to talk about service animals. So you mentioned to me in our email communications that your opinion on service animals has changed over time. So how do you feel about service animals and what caused you to shift your perspective?
I wrote, I was talking about what a mess that the marijuana. Let's see if I got it over here. Do I have the book? Yes. When I wrote this book, with determining marijuana use in the age of legalization, I was really critical about what, public health folks were setting up around that stuff. And the example of stupid, moronic public health decisions that I compared the marijuana legalization to was the whole service animal, emotional support animal from the ADA. That resulted because of their crazy way that they put it. And it's still a bit crazy, but it's not as crazy, but it's still crazy. It resulted in people bringing snakes on airplanes, alligators in cabs, peacocks. This is my emotional support peacock. I mean, I'm not kidding. You can Google that emotional support peacock and be like, oh my God, this person and horses shitting in the aisles. I mean, it was a nightmare because they did a sloppy job as to saying what qualified as an emotional support animal, a service animal, and this stuff. I'm totally aware, fully aware, because I have a family member who had no issues, and she went and got a whole bunch of vests and cards and all kinds of other shit that said service animal. You can buy them from Amazon. Yeah. Service animal, emotional support animal, and put them on, and away you go. And so I was very critical about that, and also very critical about the psychiatric applications. Right? I'm like, a blind person needs a support animal, and a dog. Right? Yeah. I get that.
There's some medical conditions that can benefit.
There's a medical. You say this as doing this, but you need an animal to help you feel better. Oh, Jesus Christ! I mean, that was what I was, and until COVID hit and I lost my husband, and I had no one, so I was grieving in isolation because there was no one
Yeah.
around. What do we shut down everything in like March
Yep.
of 2020, and he died at the end of December 1919, right? So I had 3 months or 2 months of this and that, and then everything was shut down.
Right.
Didn't go anywhere, didn't do this, didn't go to work, restaurant, everything was kind of closed. And it was my dogs that ended up getting me through that. And then and I didn't know anything about this. I just knew what I needed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the little white dog ended up being one of the criteria. There's criteria of what a service dog does. I didn't know this at the time, but now I knew that. I was like, oh, that's what the little white dog does. It's like she's aware of when my emotional shifts, and she intervenes and distracts on those pieces, which is something that is one of the core things that they train a dog to do. And throughout that COVID experience, she still does that more and more and more. The black lab responds to, I need a hug. And I can be sitting on the couch and I go, I need a hug. And she just like hops out and throws herself on me. She did that a lot. Mm-hmm. She did a lot while we were, the lights are going to go off. So I'm going to have to tell Alexa to turn them back on. Hold on.
Okay.
Alexa, turn on the pictures. Here they come.
Hey, that's
Alexa, turn on the floor lamp. Come on. There we go.
There we
go. Everyone's going to be like, what a dorky guy.
No, I love it. That's awesome.
Anyway, so it turns out that piece from Groot is deep pressure therapy. Is what that's called if somebody voted on it and said other things. And so there it is as a piece that she was offering for me. So then I was like, all right, well, if they are psychiatric service dogs and more than just emotional support animals, because they're actually doing a service, what do I need to do? Well, it turns out, you don't need to really do anything. That's the short answer, but there's a longer answer to this piece. And so there are these places out there that will. So I was like, I'll find a place that I can enroll them in so they can really truly become trained. Mm-hmm. I found a place and enrolled them in as to become certified as a service animal, because that's what they offer. And I got busy with other things. I had plans to do it. I was going to do it lickety split on these other things. I got busy with other things. Maybe 6 weeks later, I had finished training the dogs. I had a whole training thing that they needed to have me do. Mm-hmm. I got in the mail certificates that my dogs were trained as service animals.
Oh,
I'm not kidding. And I called them. I'm like, what's going on? How could you? This doesn't make any sense. I didn't do anything. I didn't pass any tests. I didn't do any of this stuff. And they were like, oh, the computer must have sent it out to you automatically. I'm like, well, you don't blame the computer. You're the ones who programmed the computer to send this out. You're muted, but I think you're muted. Oh. Or did I mute you? Somebody muted you.
No,
there we go.
I'm somehow muted myself. Yeah. That's okay.
There we go.
Listen, sometimes I just
thought it was me.
Right. Nope, I did it somehow. I don't know how, but somehow I did it.
I said Alexa.
Maybe.
The television sometimes will say that word, and then everything goes curfew.
That actually happened the other day because there was a commercial, and then ours was responding. I was like, "Shut up!" Oh.
I know. I spend more time screaming and yelling at that. I told you no.
Do you also apologize to yours? Because I apologize to mine. I'm like, shut up. And then I'm like, I'm sorry.
I have a housemate who says, please, will you turn the lights on, please?
Yes.
You have to tell it's please. She doesn't care.
I say please. When I use like Chat GPT, I say please and thank you. I absolutely do. Can you please create a LinkedIn post? Thank you. And then it responds and it's like, absolutely. Da 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 da. You're welcome. It's really cute. It's really cute.
It is really cute. It's creepy. So I got this certificate from this piece. So it's still sketchy out there. You can do it on your own if you're out there. And here's the piece. This is the really important piece. If you have a dog who's a service animal, let's say you're pretending your dog is a service animal, and so that you can take it into a movie theater or wherever, that dog's behavior has to be impeccable. Perfect. Impeccable. I can't emphasize that enough. So another dog goes by and that dog does not react.
Yeah.
That dog, you go to the grocery store and you're in the checkout line and you're putting your cans up there and that dog is laying on the floor. And you're walking through the aisles and that dog is not sniffing at the cheese in the cheese department. That dog is doing that. And so you can, just like anything with I taught my dogs how to paddleboard, right? No small feat in doing that. Not only, we spent a week, my dogs and I don't know what's going to happen next. And we spent a week just capsizing the paddleboard and then getting back on the paddleboard. We didn't paddle around.
That's fun.
We just paddled away. I was like, all right, everybody off, everybody in. I got a Frisbee so I could throw it off and I could stabilize the paddleboard. I can't do it when I'm standing up, but I can do it when I'm on my knees. And then they jump off the paddleboard and then they come back and then we get back on. And so that was part of their training so they could be competent on the paddleboard.
Yeah.
In the same piece, I worked with these dogs week after week. And I have videos that I took. So if someone said, did you really? I have videos of us going into Walmart. I was like, I got to work with one.
Yep.
And get one trained. And Groot is on the right side. And I got to work with the other dog on the left side. And she's trained on that piece. And we're going to go through it separately. And then once you've got that, we're going through together. And we're going to go through the grocery store. We're going to go to different stores. And we're going to go to restaurants. And you're going to sit down at restaurants. You're not going to sniff food at the table, sniff people's crotches. None of that. Your behaviors are going to be perfect. And to the point where, we'd go out in an aisle and I'd say sit, and then I'd walk to the end of the aisle, walk to the other aisle, walk all the way down the aisle, and then come up the other way, and they were still sitting where I told them to sit. I remember going into because people bring their shitty dogs all the time and try to pass them off as service dogs. I remember going into Trader Joe's, and I don't know what I thought. I went to get a sandwich, and they had moved the sandwiches, and it was packed like Trader Joe's is often packed up around this. And so I asked somebody, I said, where's the sandwich? And they're like, over there. And it was like on the other side of the store. I said, all right, I'll be right back. And the cart was there. There was a lot of people. Told the dogs to sit. I left. I came back. And the dogs were just sitting there, right? And he's like, those dogs are amazing. Well, thank you. It's not been easy, but I managed to get that. And so I have to tell you, if it wasn't for the dogs, I would have killed myself. And I would not have called a suicide hotline before I shot myself. It's funny. I had a friend of mine, this person, Paul, who lost his spouse, came up and was going to do the Tough Mudder with me this year. And he couldn't do the Tough Mudder. He had some issues. He decided he really didn't want to do it. I mean, he came up, I could tell he didn't want to do it. And then he ended up not doing it. And so I was, I'm the type of person that makes lemons from lemonade, or the other way around. And so I'm like, I'm going to take the dogs. I wonder if I could take the dogs in the Tough Mudder. I called the people at the Tough Mudder and said, can I bring my service dogs with me? I've done a bunch of Tough Mudder. I've never seen a dog in the Tough Mudder.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, you can bring your service dogs, totally fine. These are the elements they can do. These are the elements that they can't do. I mean, there's electrical elements. You don't want to be taking your dogs through the electrical element. You don't want to be throwing them off a roof or whatever you're doing on those things. There's certain elements that you can do with that. And they're like, yeah. And so when we went there, there were some elements that they couldn't do, and they just sat there, and I went and did it and came back around. And I mean, took a fanny pack with food and other stuff. I set it down. They sat there. I went and did that and came back. It's funny, not funny, hysterical, like funny, like in a noteworthy way.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, can I share a screen as part of this? Have you ever had a person do this?
I don't know how to do that through Discord, but yeah, go for it, and we'll figure out how to show it.
I might not be able to do this. Let's see what I can do.
See.
Applications. I'm just going to try.
There is
I see
like a
the
share
Discord.
your screen. Yeah.
Let me see if I can. We're going to see what I'm not. Hopefully, we won't lose this. No, I'm not going to do it.
No, dude. I mean, it's fine. We'll figure it out.
All right, here we go. Let me just see if I've got this thing pulled up here. Oh yeah, look at that. All right, here we go. Share screen and screen one. And nope, I don't have permission, so I don't think it's going to let me do this. Let me see. Change. Well, let me see. Here we go.
Give you permission.
Here we go. Wait. Here we go. Can you see?
There it goes.
Can you see?
Yeah, I can see.
What can you see?
I can see like Discord multiplying itself.
That is bizarre. That's not what I wanted to do.
So if you pull up whatever you're trying to show now, it should show it. It should show it. Yes,
can you
I see
that?
the picture. Yeah.
Oh,
of
brilliant.
the dogs, I see the picture. Yep.
Yeah. So that's Groot, the black dog,
Aww.
and Rocket, the white dog, sitting next to her in their service piece. And there's all these elements on the Tough Mudder, and they tell you when you do the Tough Mudder that be prepared because things are going to come up, and it's usually like someone on the edge of a thing they have to leap off of. That's difficult. This activity called the hero carry is a traditional activity. What you do is you grab another person that's running and you carry them halfway. And then you get to the halfway point. It's usually like 0.2 of a mile. And then you switch, and then they carry you the rest of the way. And so I got there. I was with a team of people that ended up going with me. And Stephanie said to me, she said, so she was so great that she was there. She said, why don't you carry the dogs? And I didn't think anything of it. I said, sure. And so that's Stephanie there in that picture. And she helped me get Groot on my shoulder, and I threw Rocket under the piece. And I didn't go to the halfway point. I carried them the entire way.
That is
the
cute.
two of that piece. And we finished. And I mean, it was not easy. I was easy carrying them for a few feet. And then we ended up, all right, let me stop sharing that screen. I don't know how to stop sharing that screen. Oh, wait, I can do it right here.
There you go.
Stop streaming.
There we go.
And we're back. There we go. So we got to the end, and I just fell apart. And I mean, I was just tears were just flowing down my down my cheeks. They were like, are you okay? What's going on? This is something you did with Brian. Is this, and I looked at them and I said, for years as I've struggled, these dogs have carried me day in and day out. Whenever I was, at the deepest, darkest peace, when friends that left me, and I told you about those friends that left me, and I had cut them out of my life, and I just had those dogs, and they were there, and throughout everything. And for me then to carry them it was such a huge, and still is this symbolic piece that, I'm all speechless around how profound that experience was.
Yeah.
That was this June. That was just a few months ago that happened. And that's just an indication of how powerful animals can be around the support they give for you. And so now I'm completely unapologetic about bringing my psychiatric service dogs with me and talking to people about what that is and how they help and the service they do, because it's a huge service, because I would have probably been dead or on medication or something, certainly I would have been diagnosed with, prolonged grief disorder at this time. My life to them.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well, if you need to grab a tissue or anything, I had to do like some controlled breathing through that so I didn't start crying as well. But if you need to grab a tissue or anything, feel free, because that was very emotional.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, so after my other grandfather, not the one that died to breast cancer in 2019, but the one who went missing in 2017 when he went missing, we got a roadside dog that needed rescuing. and I always considered him to be kind of my, not registered, I don't take him places, but he was my emotional support for a really long time, because he was this calming presence, and he would just lay there with me, and he was just and he still is very super chill, like all the time. He's usually laying back on that rug over there, but the other dogs probably cornered something outside. Also, they mowed today, so now they're all exploring the freshly mowed lawn. But, he was just this strong presence to me in a time that I really needed him to be. And I feel like if I was ever going to go through the process of getting a service animal registered and stuff, it would have been with Bo. And I didn't, but that was just because, he really provided a lot of strength to me when I needed at home. And it's kind of where I needed him the most. But yeah, animals can have such an impact on your mood. They can have such an impact on letting you just be, because they don't care if you're crying. Like, they just don't care. They're just there for you because that's what they do. So, it's
they know when you're crying and are intent. And I would turn to friends. You want to know what you want to do as a friend? Be more like my dog.
Yeah.
Which is just, if someone's having a tough time, don't try to fix it. Don't try to fix it. We try to fix everything.
Yeah.
We want to medicate and push everything away. We don't want people to talk about it. The best thing you can do is to just be present. Present for yourself, present for your family, present for your children, present for your friends.
Yeah. And
that's really the gift.
That is what service dogs do, right? If I'm upset or something, Bo will come sit next to me on the couch and he'll just lean on me. And he doesn't necessarily want me to pet him or anything. He's not trying to get me to do anything. He just wants to lean. He just wants to lean and be next to me. And it's like, as soon as I've got things back on a level playing field and everything, he'll get off the couch and he'll go somewhere else and do whatever he wants to do as a dog. It's fine. But even if I don't realize that I need him at that moment, he'll come over and he'll just lean and chill. He's just
Yeah.
very, very in tune with what I need at that time. And I feel like if more people would just, if you're upset, just kind of like hold someone's hand. Just you don't have to even talk. Just hold somebody's hand while they're in need of a friend, in need of a little bit of support. I think that can make such a huge difference if we, as a society, we're more accepting of just like, just hold a friend's hand, man.
Think about how much time we spend not touching other people.
Yeah.
Right? There is such a powerful piece of touch.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A hug. It's just putting your hand on somebody's shoulder is so powerful.
Yep.
Right?
I have 2 very touchy-feely kids, and they love hugs, and they love holding hands, and they love,
nice.
all that stuff, and it's great. And there are moments in time. Right after I cook is one of them. Right after I cook is a no touch time. Like we have to. They're so very touchy that I have to be like, after I'm done cooking, you don't touch me because I'm too hot. I'm sweaty. I'm irritated because I haven't eaten yet and I've spent an hour cooking food. We're not going to touch. And then after I've cooled off, and they'll come to me and they'll be like, "Are you cooled off enough yet, Mom?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm cooled off enough." And they'll just like give me a big hug. And I hate to think once they get out into
kudos to you.
Well, once they get out into the rest of the world, like that's not a normal, thing for boys especially to do. And I'm like, I wish it was, because it's great. It's healthy. It's good.
I think the truth of the matter is that you have allowed your kids to be the human beings that they really are.
Yeah.
I think most people are touchy-feely. Not your kids are touchy-feely. Most people are touchy-feely and then they're stifled.
Yeah.
They are stifled by what their parents, "Don't you do that, you do," and they're like this. Right? Wrapped up in knots.
Yeah.
Right? When they're 5 years old and they're going to be in therapy when they're 50 because of that stuff. You're, as a very caring, giving person, you give that freedom for your kid, and that comes through.
Yeah.
That comes through, and you'll be like, "All right, enough touchy-feely stuff."
I do have plenty of moments where I'm like, "I can't, don't touch me." Please don't touch me. But that also gives, like, my 16-year-old has moments where he gets very overstimulated, and especially restaurants, loud stuff, or if he had a pep rally at the school or something. And I think me setting those boundaries of, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, do not fucking touch me right now. I think me clearly setting those boundaries with them has enabled him now at 16, when we're in a restaurant, he's like, "Can I please just go sit in the car? That's too loud. I'm done. That's it. I'm done eating. I don't want to talk. I just want to go sit in the car where it's quiet." And it's been really nice because there are plenty of times where I'm like, "I need you to stick around for just a minute because they're going to sing happy birthday to your brother," or whatever. And he understands that. He gets it. And then as soon as I'm able to be like, "Yeah, go. I can." And it's
that's
just really
awesome.
nice. Yeah. It's really nice
That's
to
awesome.
just let them be how they want to be, because not everybody gets to be that once you're an adult.
No, you're absolutely right. Kudos to you.
Thank you. So I do, there are a couple of questions that some viewers sent in ahead of time, and I want to ask those before we wrap up.
Okay.
So one of them is from Bite Mark. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Oh, in my there's one poem that comes to mind, and actually there's one part of a poem by Robert Browning, and it's the 2 lines that really are a core piece of my life to this day, and those 2 lines are but a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's the heaven for? I love those 2 lines because what it says is we only grow when things are difficult for us. When we have to strive, if it's easy for us, there's nothing that we get from that. And whether it's from the depths of darkness or a psychedelic experience or an outward bound course or a Tough Mudder or pushing yourself in to speak in front of a group of people because you're afraid to do that, or playing the tuba because you always wanted to do that and you just never did, but God, you're going to do it. That is the piece that really helps us connect with our humanity, our purpose, and our joy. And we don't get that if we're just placidly taking the easy route.
I like that.
There we go.
She'll love that answer too.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had that one. It's always, she comes in here and she asks that question a lot. And so she was like, I can't be there. Please ask it. So here it is.
That's right. That's great.
She'll dig that one.
I wasn't even prepared for that question. I was just,
She'll dig that one a lot. So the next two come from one person. His name is Tim. So he would like to know, how did you begin to start your coaching consultation business? How did you decide to do that, and where did you start?
Tim, I worked as a psychotherapist and then worked my way up to clinical director and then program director and all of those things that you do in that piece, and realized that just wasn't where I wanted to be. I was working for a lot of, I'm sure it's going to be shocking to you. This is going to be shocking to you. A lot of mental health agencies and public service agencies treat their employees like shit. And really like the exact opposite of what their service is. And that's how it was with this organization. And I had just had enough of it. My husband, Brian, at the time, had been doing coaching. He was working for Applebee's at the time, and he had a coach, and he was like, you know what, you do this. And I was like, this is like true friendship. This is what really true friends do. And I'm like, I don't think so. He's like, no, you really do this. He's like, I said, you should do this. You could do this. You are better. I hear what you say to folks. You're better than the coach that I have that I'm working with. And one day, push came to shove. I remember this. We were going to Disney for a vacation, and like I said, I've been to Disney with Brian a lot. And there was I had worked my ass off to help this organization get this accreditation. Like, I slept in the back of my car to help them do this piece. Because I had to go to this one site that was ways away, and boy, I was on vacation and they called. They wanted some report. It was a silly report, stupid report, but they wanted it. Mm-hmm. And and I had to stop my vacation, find a computer, go do all this stuff, and do all this stuff. And then I was decided that was it. And I knew, because they were such a horrible organization and had fired so many folks, that I would just get fired, and they would just, their MO was they would fire people, let people go, and then they would never return the calls from unemployment. So you would win unemployment by default. That's what their HR did. I swear to God.
Wow.
This is how I got right up in the face of my boss when I got back, and 2 days later, my computer wasn't working, my phone wasn't working, my company credit card wasn't working, and all those other pieces that you get when you're a program director were not working, and I was gone. And they didn't fight that, and I launched my coaching practice and never looked back. It's been now I have now I have me as the boss.
Yeah.
And I can be an asshole sometimes, but I can also be pretty chill and hip and understanding. So Tim, that's how that came about. I merged my psychotherapy background with the business background that I had, because I got a business degree, and continue to learn and continue to grow, because that's the kind of person I am, and started writing books, and away we went.
That's really cool. So his next question is a little longer. His wife, Danielle, is simultaneously searching for greater purpose and trying to avoid the need to be productive. I feel you on that. The urge to try to do something is strong when she's supposed to be relaxing, and she also feels like she's stagnant. We know that one of the prime sources of happiness is purpose. How would you advise someone who has been on an intentional and dedicated search for happiness and contentment but feels stagnated? And I have a suspicion you might go back to that book that you mentioned earlier on this one.
Part of the truth of our life is that, and I learned this from Vipassana, and I would highly encourage, if you have a chance, any of you, even you, Mama, do a 10-day Vipassana course. Your life will be transformed. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. It's all paid for by prior students who put up the money for future students. And they won't take your money, and they won't. And the people that are there that are serving your meals are all prior students who say, "I'm going to come back for a week and serve other people so they can do this." And so, my learnings from that is that one of the things that is difficult for us is that we seem to think if we do this and have this and do this and have this plaque and this house and this car and this helicopter and this degree and this, then we'll be happy because I have it all. And so there becomes this intentional focus, and it has become even worse in recent years with all these books about happiness, of finding happiness, growing this, you can create this and your destiny and all these other pieces. And so very much like the psychedelic experience, you can over plan. And then it's absolutely miserable. There needs to be a middle road. So I think the search for happiness and being intentional about that is being purposeful and focused on what you want, but not over planning. And that's the same thing with the psychedelic experience. It's very much like going to Disney, not in a trippy way of Disney Mickey Mouse, but if you don't plan at all and you just show up at Disney, you're going to have a shitty time. Rides are going to be filled. Everybody's got fast passes or whatever they're called today. Reservations are done. You're just going to walk around. You're going to be at lines. You're not going to know where you're going to. You have to prepare. But there are people that go to Disney that over prepare. They've got everything planned out from 8 in the morning when people get up until 7 in the evening. They're going to get on all the rides. They're going to do this, and this has to happen, and then we're going here. We have to be. We got 15 minutes to get from this park to this park to be able to do that. And if something happens, there's a flat tire or something, their whole vacation's shot. And because they were so focused on that outcome, well, that's not good either. You don't want to not plan. You have to do some planning, but you don't want to over plan and be so focused and hooked on any outcome that when it doesn't happen, everything's for naught. It's total waste. You need to find this like middle ground. And that's true engagement in life with psychedelics in life. It's a parallel piece that we need to do. And if we're grasping for happiness and that's just as bad as pushing away depression or pushing away anger. We push away the bad stuff, we grasp for the good stuff, and then we wonder why we're all in knots. And the piece is to have not happiness. Here's a word for you. Look this up. Equanimity. Equanimity. Equanimity is where you're not hooked into happiness. You're not hooked into pushing away depression. There's a balance that comes from equanimity that then lets you ride the waves and then lets you not also bask in the great things that are happening, because all that good stuff ends. All the good stuff ends. Everything, the carrot cakes are going to end. The movies are going to end. People around us are going to die. We're all going to get sick. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's the way it is. Everything that's good ends. And everything that's bad ends. And having equanimity instead of grasping onto the happiness or grasping onto the joy or grasping onto the love and holding onto it tight is a much better way to go about it.
I like that.
I hope that answered your question.
That's great. Well, we are at the magic moment of the stream, which means we're wrapping up.
We're past the magic moment of the
No, come on. I got my magic wand.
Oh, the magic moment. Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
So, if you could wave a
3-hour
magic
podcast.
wand, right? Yeah. If you could wave a magic wand, eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
It comes back to this piece that I talked about of things being permanent.
Mm.
You know, you are not your diagnosis. This is not a permanent way of being. You don't have to embrace that and hold on to it and have that stifle you or empower you. It's just a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a feeling. Sometimes it's intense. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it seems like it's never going to end. Sometimes it feels like it's been gone for a long time, and then you're afraid it's going to come back, which is not a good place. There's no equanimity around that either. You know, it just is. It just is. My response to somebody, folks, and they're like, how's your grief today? And I'm like, well, it's up and it's doing this. And, really, it's just because it just is.
Mm-hmm.
It's no big deal. It's going to change. And you're going to change because nothing stays the same.
That's true. Well, we are wrapping up. So folks who are here in chat, if you have anything else you would like to ask Scott, feel free to pop that into the chat. And Scott, I'll just turn it over to you for a minute and say if there's anything that we didn't touch on or any resources, recommendations you want to make, feel free to throw them
in the
out.
last 2.5 hours.
I know.
So you were like, at 11 o'clock, you were like, oh, you can go as long as you want. I'm fine with that. And you're like, oh, man, I shouldn't have said that.
No, this is great. This has been great.
This has been a fabulous adventure this last couple hours with you. I really want to thank you. What a great discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining us. I know that it's late for you, so appreciate you staying up late for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. My privilege. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, I'm going to disconnect with Scott. Stick around for just a little bit, and I will be right back. That was such a good conversation with Scott. I hope that y'all enjoyed that. Thank you so much for being here and for the interaction in chat. I really appreciate it whenever people are here and ask questions or send them in ahead of time. That was really cool too, to have those kind of ready to ask and have an engaging conversation with things that people want to have answered. You know, I come up with these questions sometimes and I'm like, these sound like good questions to me, but what do people want to know about this topic? So I come up with them, and then it's always more meaningful or impactful, I think, whenever they're questions from folks who are listening and watching. So thank y'all so much for being here for that. I really appreciate it. It is probably a little late for me to do very much gaming right now, but I will do a couple of Minion Masters. I'll just open up Minion Masters and see if there are any dailies. I don't remember if I've done my dailies or not. So let's see. Oh, and I'll go ahead and stop YouTube.